Hello and welcome everyone to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Chris Shepard. It is going to be a fantastic show today. Today we're going to have a lot to cover, starting off with unfortunately rounding out our IDP rankings, very popular in the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast realm. We finish off strong, though, with some rookie DBs who I'm really thrilled to talk about. Then we move on to a fantasy basketball season kind of recap. I know we're going to be getting into the finals, so there's going to be a lot of hype around that, but we are just going to review this past fantasy basketball season, and then stick around to the end of the show. We have a very, very special segment where we recap and congratulate the Oilers' path to the finals, and we also make some predictions, a very special one coming up in the last segment of today's show. But as always, before we begin, I do ask that you like, follow, and subscribe to the show. We also do get a lot of tips and donations, so if you're feeling so inclined, do please leave a tip or donation at the link gsmc.cloud. It supports the network, me, and my fellow podcasters, so anything you can give is greatly appreciated by all. Now, starting off with the first segment of today's show, like I said, we are going to unfortunately be rounding out our IDP rankings. I know how popular they are on this channel, especially with me as your new host. So I'm really, really saddened that this is the final one, but also very excited to present this list to you guys. A lot of promise on this talented top 10 list. So let's get right into it with our picks. Coming in at the number 10 position, this guy, in my honest opinion, could have been as high as the number 1 overall position because of the fact he is going into a situation where cornerbacks are at a premium and this defense is young and exciting. It's Terrion Arnold from the Detroit Lions. This is one of the draft steals the Lions got out of Alabama, so I'm really, really thrilled to see how he develops in a situation where this up-and-coming secondary is exciting with guys like Ifeatu Melifonwu, Kirby Joseph. They also drafted Ennis Rakestraw Jr. How did they do it this draft? 2 spectacular defensive backs that the Lions were able to draft, and I'm really, really excited to see how this defense develops. But starting off with Terrion Arnold, going over some of his stats from last season at Alabama. He had 63 tackles, 5 interceptions, 1 sack, and a forced fumble. Also at his combine, he had a pretty good combine as well. He had a 4.5 40 and a 37-inch vertical. So you can see the length, the versatility that Terrion Arnold already brings to a young up-and-coming secondary. He should be a fantastic asset to your fantasy IDP league. Coming in at the number 9 position, we have a guy who not many people know, perhaps, but I think he could have a very huge impact on this defense because of the fact that it's one of the less talented ones in the league. Dadrian Taylor Demerson out of Texas Tech. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals. I think that he will be one of those guys who immediately has a lot of playing time out of this group due to the fact that Arizona does not really have or is known for their secondary. They do have a guy in Budda Baker who is really talented, one of the best young safeties in the NFL. But Dadrian Taylor Demerson really won't have that much competition, and he does have the stats from college coming over to the NFL to back him up. He had in his career 238 tackles, 10 interceptions, and 2 sacks, and he had a not too bad combine either. Tested very well with a 4.4 130 and a 38-inch vertical. So you can see that Dadrian Taylor Demerson is a nice addition to the Arizona Cardinals backfield, secondary, whatever you want to call it. I really do think that Arizona is looking to improve in that department, and Dadrian Taylor Demerson could help them right away. That being said, he might be a bit of a risk due to the fact that Arizona's defense is not statistically known for yard prevention or touchdown prevention, so that's where his stats could be hurt. But I think he could be an interesting pick in the future, a couple years down the line, when you can say Arizona could be kind of in that mid-level defense as they steadily improve. Coming in at the number 8 position, is a guy out of Wake Forest, Malik Mustafa. He goes to a San Francisco secondary where he could start a couple of the first few games due to the fact that both of their top DBs, Talanoa Hufanga and Charvarius Ward, are coming off injuries from last season, but I do see him falling down the pecking order as they start to get healthy, but he's a very interesting asset to the San Francisco secondary. In his entire collegiate career, he had 175 tackles, 3 picks, and 4 sacks. At the combine, he had a 4.5 440, a little bit on the slower side, but he had a 41.5-inch vertical, so he has a lot of exciting traits to focus on. I think that Kyle Shanahan will want to implement him a little bit into the system. As you know, he is very famous for trying to figure out certain combinations that help him a lot back there in the San Fran defense, and that is why they are one of the league's best. So while Malik Mustafa is not necessarily going to be someone who starts right away, and therefore he probably won't be as productive as you might hope, he is still going to be someone who I'm really excited to see develop in a secondary and a defense that is one of the truly most talented in the entire NFL. Coming in at the number 7 position, that should say Kalen Bullock, that is out of USC. He goes to the Houston Texans, another young and up-and-coming secondary. Out of USC, he was first-team Pac-12. He had 42 solo tackles last year, 7 passes defended, 2 interceptions at the combine. He had a 4.48 40 and also a 33-inch vertical, so very interesting assets there. And he comes into a Houston secondary that is really, really looking to improve upon last season. D'Amico Ryans is building something special over there from his first year. Coming into his second year, he has a lot of different pieces in that secondary, and he should be excited to add a guy like Kalen Bullock to that roster. They have guys already like Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie, a couple of other young guns who had exciting seasons last year as well. So look for Kalen Bullock to have one of those sneakily good IDP seasons if he should be incorporated into the Houston Texans secondary. As of now, though, I still see him having to wait a couple of years because Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie are already starting to become the foundation in which D'Amico Ryans wants to build in that secondary. But Kalen Bullock coming in at number 7 on this list. Look out for him in the future. Another guy who's stepping into a situation that should really help his development, Tyke Smith out of Georgia. He is coming into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he is learning under one of the best young safeties, if not the best safety overall in the NFL, in Antoine Winfield Jr. Tyke Smith, obviously, he's been around a lot. He has won championships at the college football level with Georgia, so he brings that experience and winning mentality to a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense that could catapult themselves into contention in the NFC should their season go their way and Baker Mayfield continue developing offensively. But let's look at Tyke Smith. 70 tackles last year in a title-winning year for him. Well, actually, that was 2 years ago. I'm sorry. Georgia did not win the title last year. But you can see the production, the traits he brings at the combine. He ran a 4.46 40 and had a 36-inch vertical. So yes, I think that Tyke Smith is going to be one to watch for, maybe partnering with Antoine Winfield Jr. for years to come in that Tampa Bay secondary. Coming in at number 5, another guy who I really think could be the number 1 rookie DB when all is said and done at the end of the fantasy football year, Cooper DeJean. He has something that some of these guys may not have, and that is versatility. He can play linebacker, he can play safety, he can even return kicks. So if you're looking for a guy who can produce kind of on special teams as well as defensively in your IDP league, Cooper DeJean should be that guy. He is stepping into a secondary that is going to be highly competitive due to the fact that I expect there to be a lot of turnover there, or with guys like Quinion Mitchell coming as well out of this draft to this Eagles team, and Reed Blankenship kind of being that bridge guy, and then Darius Slay, one of the most experienced corners in the NFL today. So Cooper DeJean may not start immediately, but they have the benefit of using him in so many different areas, so that versatility could help him rise up the rookie DB rankings in IDP leagues. And I think he could be a fantastic option for your IDP team in a Philadelphia Eagles secondary that is one of the most talented in the league. Coming in at the number 4 spot, another highly underrated kind of safety out of Miami, who is going into a spot where he could also see a couple of minutes in terms of playing time. Cam Kinchens. He was a 2-time first-team All-ACC player, 4'6", 240 at the combine, not the fastest, had a 35-inch vert. He is kind of a more developmental guy in this high end of these rankings, but he goes into an LA Rams team where they aren't really set in terms of secondary. They have guys they really like in their front 7, but Cam Kinchens is stepping into a secondary with guys like Cam Curl, Russ Yeast, guys who are still in that developmental phase of their own careers. So look for Cam Kinchens to get on the field maybe. I know Sean McVay loves kind of these utility guys that he can use defensively. He always comes up with tricky schemes in that LA Rams defense. So I do expect Cameron Kinchens to be kind of one of those attractive options if you're looking for a guy later in IDP draft rounds where you can see that high-end potential for him this season. So Cameron Kinchens at 4, I'm really excited about. At the number 3 spot is another guy who I'm really excited for out of Georgia, also that winning mentality. Javon Bullard goes to a Green Bay Packers secondary where he should develop right away. He has another guy in Jair Alexander who is becoming one of the premier cornerbacks in the NFL. Last season at Georgia, he had 54 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 2 interceptions. Had a pretty decent combine, 4.47 40, so 33-inch vertical. He brings that winning mentality like his former teammate Tyke Smith does, to his Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to the Green Bay Packers, who are another young up-and-coming defense and secondary whom I'm really excited about. So I'm really thrilled to see Javon Bullard on this list, and I can't wait to see how he develops. Coming in at number 2, kind of another guy who's stepping into a situation that I don't think is as settled as people think. Obviously, you have guys in Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas and Taylor Rapp who you really like over there at Buffalo, but Cole Bishop being added to that kind of rotation out of Utah should be very intriguing to see. 4.45 40 at the combine, 39-inch vertical, one of the better DB performers at the combine in my opinion. So I do think that he is one of those guys who can step right in should a guy like Benford or Rasul Douglas go down. I don't think he starts right away. He's still in that second string kind of level for me. I do believe that the Bills secondary isn't as set in stone as people think. Some call it one of the better secondaries in the league. I'm not buying into that as much as others are, but Cole Bishop being added to it should make it a whole of a lot better. But I don't think he's as interesting as the guy at number 1 in Tyler Nubin, who steps right into one of the better corner situations in the league, because the New York Giants, they are also one of those teams who has a lot of young talent, but I don't think they're as set in stone as people think. They have exciting guys in Jason Pinnock and Deontay Banks, but they don't have proven guys, and Tyler Nubin can step in and assume the mantle of being one of those premier players in that Giants secondary, another defense who I'm really excited to see. But that should just about do it for this segment of today's show. Coming up next segment, also for the first time ever in GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast history, I will be going over one of my own personal fantasy football mock drafts. You definitely want to stick around for that. It should be a very, very, very exhilarating segment. We will be right back to discuss that. I feel like I'm losing.